Hi, my name's Erica, and I'm here to tell you, don't think this could never happen to you. Don't think that just by being involved in with your child in their education, having all the mental health systems working with you, don't think that it can't be your child. I have a 14-year-old child who has special needs that had everything in place. I'm actively involved. I'm there every step of the way. And I still watched our school systems bring in police against him. I now have a child who is afraid to leave the house, who is scared of the police, who's scared of teachers, and now has PTSD from going to school and giving it his all.
So again, I just want to say how wonderful it is to be here with you all virtually. The outpouring of interest and support for this event has been deeply inspiring. As I share this section on school health and safety, I would love for folks to be thinking about what makes you feel safe and supported. This question is an important starting place for how we can envision and create a climate in our schools that supports students and creates a culture of safety that centers the needs of children and young people. Please feel free to add your reflections, your ideas, your thoughts in the comment section. Now more than ever, young people, and specifically school-aged children, need support. Our country is experiencing an urgent mental health crisis. In 2019, more than 1 in 3 high school students said they experienced persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness, and 1 in 5 students seriously considered suicide. Emergency rooms across the country saw a significant increase in the number of ER visits for mental health reasons in young people. While this crisis isn't new, a persistent lack of investments in school-based mental health resources on top of a pandemic has made it exponentially worse. Young people who experience anxiousness, depression, and worse are struggling, and their mental health challenges can be incredibly overwhelming for parents and educators to navigate. Support and safety go hand in hand, and too many of our schools lack the resources to provide meaningful support. School counselors, nurses, social workers, and school psychologists are often the first to see children who are sick, stressed, or traumatized, particularly for low-income school districts. The benefits of investing in mental health services in schools goes above and beyond the immediate supports that children and young people get when they engage in these services. These same schools with these services and supports see better attendance rates, better academic achievement, and higher graduation rates, as well as low rates of suspensions, expulsions, and other disciplinary incidents. Support and safety go hand in hand, and data shows us that the presence of school-based mental health providers not only improves outcomes for students, but can improve overall school safety. The benefit of investing in school mental health supports is clear. So you would think it would make sense for school boards, principals, government leaders, and elected officials to be using every available resource to increase access to school-based health and mental health professionals. But instead, what's happening is funding for police and schools has been on the rise, on top of a national youth mental health crisis, and while schools face critical shortages of counselors, nurses, psychologists, school social workers, and teachers. Even schools offering some mental health services are terribly understaffed. Nationally, it's recommended that at least 1 counselor and 1 social worker for every 250 students, at least 1 nurse per 750 students, and 1 psychologist for every 700 students. These staffing recommendations are a minimum requirement. Despite that, and as this map depicts, the 90% of students are in schools that don't meet these standards, and in schools with a significant lack of health and mental health support staff, law enforcement presence is increasing. Many states reported 2 to 3 times as many police officers in schools as social workers, and several states reported more police officers in schools than nurses. This is an issue affecting millions of students across the country. That's 14 million students in schools with police, but no counselor, no nurse, psychologist, or social worker. That breaks down to 1.7 million students in schools with police but no counselors, 3 million students in schools with police but no nurses, 6 million students in schools with police but no school psychologists, and 10 million students in schools with police but no social workers. What this looks like in our schools is parents like Erica seeing their kids experience harm versus help. And just to give an example, there are now more law enforcement officers in Florida's K through 12 schools than there are nurses. And the arrests of students have jumped in the 2 years since legislators passed a law requiring that every school deploy a police officer and an armed school employee. You may have remembered the Give a Teacher a Gun effort. This more police, more guns approach is not working. And these images show the Orlando Police Department escorting a 6-year-old away after arresting them at their school. And then there's Kaya, a 6-year-old who, with her grandmother here, Kaya's tiny wrists were zip tied and she was escorted out of her school, taken into custody after she reportedly threw a temper tantrum. The temper tantrum had been triggered by tiredness because of her sleep apnea, a condition the school was well aware of that made her irritable that day. As a result of the arrest, Kaya developed extreme separation anxiety and wakes up screaming with night terrors. These stories are not the only ones, and they're happening across the country. During the 2018 to 2019 school year, the number of children and young people arrested in Florida increased 8%. Even though communities around the schools saw a 12% decline in the number of young people arrested. Police officers arrested elementary-age kids 345 times. That includes arrests of a 5-year-old and 5 arrests of 6-year-olds in the same year. School safety it's a shared responsibility. We know what works, and it's not more of the same. Investing in school-based mental health supports helps kids, particularly the most vulnerable, while continuing to pour hundreds of millions of dollars into policing in schools has not made our schools any safer, and instead has actually created more harms. The reality is that together we can change this, and it starts by taking action, speaking out, signing petitions, and advocating for resources for student mental health supports. It means showing up at school board meetings, writing or calling your elected officials, and educating them on the importance of school-based mental health supports and the mental health crisis that our children and families are navigating. Additionally, police and schools are funded in a number of ways, but ultimately they're funded by us. They're funded by you through your local, state, and federal taxes. And the people you elect, the people we elect, Congress, governors, mayors, city council, and even school boards make funding decisions on our behalf, on your behalf, from year to year, which means you can help influence how your elected representative distributes and redistributes public school funds. You can push for budget proposals that invest funds into what students really need instead of pouring money needlessly into more police in our schools. You can advocate for and tell your legislators to support bills like the Counseling Not Criminalization Act, which would provide $5 billion in new grant funding to help schools hire more counselors, social workers, behavioral health professionals, and to help school districts implement services in schools that create a positive and safe climate for all students. Together, we can advocate for the type of safe and supportive school environments where all children can learn, grow, flourish, and thrive. So let's continue this conversation in our homes, in our schools, and in our communities. I mean, let's do it everywhere. Let's have this conversation everywhere. Because when we know better, we can dream bigger, we can make meaningful change in the lives of our children, and ultimately, we can do better as a society. Thank you. is a tender thing, worthy of protecting. Schools can be a safe place for students to learn, heal, make mistakes, and grow. A place where students can receive the support they need to thrive. A place where children can build healthy relationships with themselves, their peers, with adults, and their communities. Introducing policing into schools and criminalizing student behavior fractures and harms this delicate ecosystem, turning students into targets, teachers and staff into weapons, and schools into pipelines to prison. When we resource our fears instead of our futures, students, schools, and communities lose access to essential supports. Young people, educators, parents, and communities are stepping up to protect the delicate ecosystem in our schools. They're advocating for resources to be redirected away from systems of harm and punishment towards systems of support and care. Together, we can build a world where schools are a safe place for students to thrive and reach their full potential. To learn more and take action, visit MomsRising.org.